Hi there, gooseneck and fifth wheel trailer owners. Today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to assemble B&W's companion fifth wheel. And this is designed to drop down inside of your existing B&W gooseneck hitch. The companion is going to allow you to take your existing B&W gooseneck hitch, which you're already using to haul your gooseneck trailer, and convert that easily and quickly over into a fifth wheel hitch. So that way you can pull both fifth wheel and gooseneck trailers, and it's as simple as removing the ball from your receiver, because this is held in place right into the receiver of your gooseneck hitch, just like the ball is for your gooseneck hitch. Pull the pin, companion slides down, you're now a fifth wheel. Once you lock the pin back in, you're ready to go. Pull the pin again, you can then pull the fifth wheel out, put your gooseneck ball back in, and you're ready to haul a gooseneck once again. We wanted to walk you through the setup of your B&W companion here, as there are a few components you're going to receive. You're going to get them in a couple different boxes, and it's going to look a little intimidating because there's a lot of hardware when you first open it up, but it actually goes together pretty quickly. Now that we've gone over some features, we'll show you how to get it set up so you can install it into the B&W gooseneck receiver that you've got in your truck. These components here, these are going to ride underneath the companion when it's in place, and they're to take up the extra space between the corrugation here in the bed. You'll first want to determine if you want to put it in this position or in this position, and it's really determined by your truck on how wide the spaces are. If it'll sit flat down in here like this with the curves at the top, then that's how you'll want to put it. If it doesn't fit in between the grooves, then if you flip it over, this is the narrower side, and you'll want to use that side. If you have a Nissan Titan truck, you'll want to refer to the instructions because there are some special instructions due to the way the corrugation is set up in those particular trucks. Now that we know which side we're going to be using for our truck, ours is going to be the larger side, the wider side, facing towards the bottom of the truck. So I've got the companion here turned upside down. It's just a little bit easier to work with it this way. The slots here on each leg, you'll have one on each side, is for this rubber piece here. We're going to take the Phillips head screws that come in our kit. They're going to drop down through the rubber, go through the B&W companion, and then on bottom we're going to follow that up with a flat washer, a lock washer, as well as a nut. We're not going to fully tighten these down. You can see here that the companion does have a slotted hole. So we're going to need this to be able to slide in here so we can determine the correct location where it's going to sit on the bed once we get it in place. We are going to loosely install the rest of the hardware. So there's another hole here on the opposite side of this piece, and then we'll install it the same way on the other leg of our companion. We now need to determine the best location for the shank that's going to slide down into our receiver hitch. The bottom of our B&W here, you'll see that it has 4 holes on each side, and these holes are offset. They're offset towards the cab side of the hitch. This is going to be the cab side, this is going to be the tailgate side. You can install this in either this position here, which would put the shank towards the front of the hitch, which would move the whole hitch a little bit rearward, or you could put it like this, which would have the opposite effect. That's going to put our shank more towards the center, which is going to bring it slightly closer to the cab of the truck. You'll want to put this depending on where your gooseneck is. If we look here, our gooseneck, you can see our safety chain cables here. And where the axle is, where our wheel is here, our hitch is slightly in front of the axle. So since it's slightly in front of the axle, we're going to use this to position the weight of our trailer where it's going to hook up to our hitch right over top of the axle. So we're actually going to put this in this position, which is going to push the whole hitch slightly towards the rear of the truck, positioning it right over top of our axle. And if your gooseneck was the opposite way, maybe the gooseneck you had was slightly behind the axle, then you would want to install it in the other orientation, so that way it would push the hitch directly over top of your axle. So now we're just going to secure this. The shank here, the plates on it, has threads in the holes. So we're just going to go through the companion hitch and thread it into the plates of that shank. Each one's going to have a lock washer on it, so make sure you put that on there first. So now we've gone ahead and flipped it up on its side. This is the top of the B&W companion. The large bolt that comes in your kit is going to slide down through the open hole. But you want to make sure you're using the hole that's lined up with the receiver that we just put in, because this center hole here doesn't line up with ours because we installed ours offset to push the hitch towards the rear a little bit. So what you can do is this plate, if we reach around the back side where this bolt is and push on the bottom of that bolt, it's spring loaded and the plate actually can then be swapped like that. And here you can see that it now lines up with the hole on this side. We're then going to take our long bolt, we're going to push it down into the hole. So you can see here this is loose and we're trying to line up these slots to make them even. So I'm just going to tighten down my bolt, and as I'm tightening it down it's drawing that spacer up, and we just want to feel until it makes it so it's the same on each side. That looks pretty well centered right there. So now that we've got that centered, we're going to come back to the plate side. And this guy here, since it's spring loaded, we can take this and drop it down over the head of our bolt, and that will lock that in place to keep that from spinning. So now that we've got some of the pre-assembly done, we can go ahead and put it into our gooseneck receiver. I've already pulled the lever and removed the ball. So now we're just going to bring our hitch over and drop it down into place. Just the base here, it is heavy, but it's not that heavy, not nearly as heavy as most of your fifth wheel heads. So you could probably do this by yourself, but an extra set of hands can make it a little bit easier. But you can see here I'm doing it by myself. It's not really that heavy, for at least how large it is. So now that we've got it slid into place, we need to check those rubber feet that we had. We need to line those up with the slots here, so that way they're down in between. So we can just kind of lift up on one side a little bit, push those guys over until they're into place, and then we can tighten them down afterwards. We can then run these down with an 11mm socket. Sometimes if you just put a little downward pressure on it, you can get lucky and it will tighten down without you having to put a Phillips on the other side. Just like that there. If it doesn't, you'll have to lift it up and put a Phillips on it. But a lot of times with a little pressure and with an impact gun, it'll draw down. We can now also go back and tighten down the hardware that held our shank in place. We're going to use a 19mm socket for this. And now that we've got those tightened down, we're going to come back to our lock handle and we're going to put it back into place to make sure our hitch stays locked in where it needs to be. We can now go back and torque our hardware. We're going to start by torquing the side plate bolts. You can find your torque specifications in your instructions. Do keep in mind that the side plate ones are going to be different than the top one. Once our side bolts are torqued, I went ahead and just pulled this up again to get it off there so it's not locked anymore, and we're going to torque this to the specifications in our instructions. And then of course we'll place our lock back in place to ensure that it can't come off. We're now going to install the arms that's going to hold our receiver head up for our fifth wheel. These have various different locations that you can install them in. You'll see all the holes here for the various mounting locations that you can put them in. You can also install the arms in this orientation where you can see it's got an angle that's slightly this direction. This one's more straighter. That can offset it slightly towards the cab in this direction. Or if we were to install it like this, putting this on this side, it would offset it slightly towards the rear. This is all going to depend on your truck and trailer combination based on the height of your trailer, the height of your truck, and the amount of overhang that your trailer has over the bed of your truck. So you just want to measure from the ground up to the kingpin while your trailer is level. And then you can do the same thing here on your truck. You want to measure from the ground up to where your receiver head would go so you can help get the most level ride as possible. And then of course you want to set your distance so you can get the best cab clearance as possible. So now that we know where we want them to put them, we're going to put ours in the medium position. So I'm going to go ahead and grab 4 bolts and 4 lock washers. These are slightly longer than the ones that we use to secure the shank. You can see they've got a slight shoulder on them there. We're going to place lock washers on our bolts before we slide them through, line them up with the holes for the appropriate position that we want it to be in. And then over on the other side, we're going to secure it to these spacer blocks that have threaded holes. And if we look, this one's got a smooth bore on this side, and then the threads are all the way to the edge on the other side. We want the smooth bore side to go towards our arm that we're installing. So like this. I'm just going to slide it in. This should line up with the 2 bolts that we slid through, and then we're just going to turn them to thread them into this plate. Once we get both of these loosely started, we'll then do the other 2 set of holes on the other side of the arm and get those loosely started, and then we'll do the same thing with the arm on the other side. Now with them all loosely installed, we can go back and tighten them down with a 19mm socket. Then we can go back and torque down this hardware to the specifications found in our instructions. We'll now want to put on the small spring that's going to help keep your hitch head angled kind of downward. We're going to put this on the cab side of our arm on the driver's side, and this is just going to tap into place here. Yeah, and we're just lightly tapping it there. You don't have to put a lot of force into it. Once it starts, it goes on pretty easy. It's that initial start that takes a second. Our spring has a small little bend in it that's going to sit right there on top, just like that. We're going to take our bolt, we're going to slide it through, and then we're going to secure it with the included nylon locking nut. And then we're just going to tighten these down with an 11mm socket and wrench. I am just going to put the orientation of the spring so it's kind of straight up with the arm like that, and then tighten it down. We can now take our 5th wheel handle and we're going to install it into place. We're going to put the handle in just like this with the sticker up towards the top. And there are 3 holes here in the top that's going to line up with our handle. We're going to take the button head screws that come in the kit, we're going to drop them down the top and then secure it with the flange nuts on bottom. And then I also recommend, before tightening this hardware down, to take the pin that's attached here and drop that down through the hole. This will just ensure that when you tighten that hardware down, the pin should be able to be removed up and down easily. If you tighten it down first, sometimes the handle can have a slight bit of a bind to it, making it hard to insert the pin. Then we can go back and tighten these down with a 7/32 Allen and a 9/16 wrench. We can now get ready to set our head into place. We're going to pull the pin, lift up a little bit on the lever here, and then we can slide out the large pin. That's going to go back down. We're going to do the same thing to the other side. You'll find some white lithium grease included in your kit. It's actually found inside the manual that comes included with it. So you just want to flip through the booklet until you find the page that has this stuck to it. There's a little bit of glue. I've already ripped it out. We're going to use this grease to lubricate the bushings that we have here before we drop our head into place. So we're just going to squirt some out of there. And we're going to do the same thing to the other side. With our bushings lubricated, we'll just set our 5th wheel head into place. Just be careful not to pinch the chains or pins onto the bushings. Now that we've got it on there, we can slide our pins through and then secure it in place with the clip. And we'll do the same thing on the other side. And that'll do it for our look of the installation process for the B&W Companion.